Tonight, Laurel Lake Music Society is pleased to welcome to Tryon Estate Stage the outstanding musicians of the Greenville Symphony Orchestra. Bravo. For 7 years, the Greenville Symphony Orchestra has been presenting chamber music programs for our enjoyment that feature the principal musicians of the orchestra. The repertoire represents a variety of composers and various instrumental combinations. In this program, Dance and Romance, the Beethoven will serenade you, Paganini and Rossini will thrill you, and the Piazzolla will leave you wanting to dance. I want to see us all do it. Let's give a warm welcome to Sherwood Mobley and the principal musicians of the Greenville Symphony Orchestra.
I'll have to raise this back up, Fran. Hope you don't mind. Good evening and welcome. How are you? It's great to see so many smiling, shining faces. We really enjoy coming here to Tryon Estate, and we want to thank the Laurel Lakes Music Society for continuing to bring us here. I jokingly said to Fran tonight when I came in, so when can we start talking about next year? So I will be calling her very soon, and we do hope to be back next year. Great program this evening. I think you'll enjoy it. As she has already mentioned, the Beethoven will serenade you. The Paganini and the Rossini will definitely thrill you, just notes all over the place. And the Piazzolla, I'll come looking for you for that dance, all right? All right. I'd like to welcome to the stage Xiaoqing Yu, who is the concertmaster for the Greenville Symphony Orchestra, and Amy Yang, principal bassoon with the orchestra. Xiaoqing will say a few words to you about the first work on the program. Xiaoqing Yu.
Thank you. Good evening. Excellent. It's a very friendly crowd. I'm just going to talk about this little piece in say a few words, because she wanted me to explain this piece a little bit. I don't argue with lady, so I will see, because she said this piece is quite, she uses a lot of energy, so I better talk. This piece is written by Niccolo Paganini. This guy is very famous for writing violin music. And we all consider him as the magician, devil violinist. More devil than magician. And he composed everything, almost everything unplayable for a violinist. Yeah. And so is this piece. And this piece is actually written for bassoon and violin. So it's very unusual combination. The reason was during Paganini time, he was very famous. But there was another guy, also very famous, a bassoonist. And this guy was very obnoxious, and he always said, there's nothing for me to play. Everything's so simple. So Paganini wrote one piece for him. So this is our fabulous bassoonist who Paganini wants to torture.
Wasn't that wonderful? Yeah, thank you. Our concert master, Xiao-Qing Yu and Amy Young. I'd like to introduce our principal flute with the Greenville Symphony Orchestra, Caroline Ulrich. Our principal second violin is Joanna Lebo, and principal viola is Katie Day. Those are the three musicians coming out for the next selection, and Katie will say a few words to you about the next selection on the program.
Good evening. We are delighted to be here once again. It's always nice to leave the city and come to what I call the country, the mountains. It's just beautiful up here at Sunset driving up, despite the traffic on 85 slightly. But we are going to play a really wonderful work for you next, a serenade for flute, violin, and viola by Beethoven. Of course, we know lots about Beethoven. This piece may be familiar to you. It is one of his more, I think, frequently played mixed chamber music works. And it was an early composition composed in 1802, so sort of kind of at the end of his early period, where things were still maybe evolving. First Symphony, early string quartets. He hadn't sort of yet reached Opus 131 or the Ninth Symphony. So you're going to hear a lot of that sort of transparent writing that he used in his early works. A serenade, as you may know, is a musical composition. It's a structural form. It comes from the word, pardon my Italian, but sereno, which means calm. And so normally it's not a big Sturm und Drang kind of piece. It's more sort of easy and light. However, Beethoven being the kind of composer that he is, you will hear a lot of extreme dynamics and kind of some different ends being explored between the instruments, although there are plenty of beautiful moments, don't be afraid. But it is, I think, a piece that sort of explores very quickly color change and character change. The first movement is an allegro. It's actually marked entrata, so kind of an opener piece, really nice to start with. And then it goes on through different movements. Two big theme and variations, which is kind of unusual to have two, much less one, and they're both pretty extensive. A really wonderful allegro in the middle, allegro molto, which is really kind of devilish and to start with, but then sort of transforms into a beautiful major. And then the last movement, I'm not sure if it's in your program or not, is marked allegro, quick and lively, but it has a funny word that we had to look up, disinvolto, which means unrestrained. So that's where we maybe get the foreshadowing of the middle and later periods to come. So we hope you enjoy this. We've had a great time rehearsing together, and we hope that you enjoy our performance. Thanks.
Tim Easter, the principal double bass with the Greenville Symphony Orchestra. He's really one that suggested we consider doing this piece, the upcoming piece, and he'll be the one speaking about it a little bit. And with him is our principal cellist, Leslie Nash Kilstoff. So coming to the stage next will be Tim Easter.
Good evening. Thanks for having us both. We appreciate y'all coming, or for us coming here at your facility. I'd like to introduce the next piece. I'd like to introduce both the composer and the piece because I think it's kind of interesting. The piece is from Rossini, who's an Italian composer, and known for many operas, actually 39 of them, of which Barbara Seville was a very famous one. So on all those laurels, he was able to retire at an early age of 39, very wealthy, and he lived kind of a life of luxury. Along with that, with the life of luxury, he met a companion, Sir Davis Solomon, who was amateur cellist, who also had bumped into the double bass virtuoso Domenico Dragonetti, who was actually called the Paganini of the double bass. So with that being said, he asked Rossini to commission a piece from Rossini for a duet of double bass and cello, and they played it for one of Solomon's parties. What's interesting about the piece, though, it was lost for essentially 145 years. It was kind of auctioned off or in the Solomon family. Eventually, in 1969, Rodney Slatford, a double bassist from Great Britain, found it searching for music for Dragonetti and commissioned or asked the BBC to use their influence, and the buyer said yes. And so they actually commissioned it for publication and broadcast. So right now we have a great piece, which is kind of rare for double bass and cello. And a few years later, we're going to perform it for you tonight, and I hope you enjoy it.
the Greenville Symphony Orchestra Woodwind Quintet, made up of Caroline Ulrich, who's already been out flute with the Beethoven, Jenny Zablisky-Metzger is principal oboe, Anthony Murata is principal clarinet, who, by the way, will be performing Aaron Copland's clarinet concerto next weekend at Gunter Theater with the Chamber Orchestra, Greenville Symphony Chamber Orchestra, Anthony Murata. And bassoon was out earlier with the Paganini, Amy Young. And horn, French horn, is Annika Zulke-King, and she will be speaking about the next work. I'll have a little something to add to what she says. So Annika will come to the stage. That's who you will see next.
Good evening. This next piece, titled Libertango, is by Astor Piazzolla, who's an Argentinian composer, and he lived from 1921 through 1992. He was born in Argentina, but he spent some of his younger years as a kid in New York, and he learned to speak a bunch of languages: English, Italian, French, and Spanish. I think, well, he already knew Spanish. And so he returned to Argentina at the age of 16, and he studied composition with Gina Stera, who's actually another composer that's going to be featured next week at our chamber orchestra concert. So if you like this Argentinian music, there's more next week. And he also studied with Nadia Boulanger in Paris, who also taught Copland and a bunch of famous composers. And when he went to Paris, he had composed a bunch of more modern classical orchestra music. And when she was interviewing him, she finally got him to admit that he played the tangos a lot. You know, he is a bandoneon player, which is another, it's like an accordion, but a little different made. And she was convinced him that it was this style of music that was really his personal style, and he should. She encouraged him to follow that line of music, and instead of trying to, conform to other people's styles, she wanted him to develop his own style. So he did, and so he started composing things that are influenced by the tango, like this Libertango, but he definitely wrote them for different ensembles and included a lot of jazz and classical music influences. This was composed in 1974, and it's originally for his quintet or sextet, which was bandoneon, bass, I think there was piano sometimes, violin, guitar, and maybe some other instruments would come in and out. And so this is an arrangement, and Amy and I are kind of like the bass and the accordion. You'll hear Amy's continuous eighth notes, and that's what he would do on the bandoneon, which is probably a bit easier than on bassoon. And then the three upper winds are all trading off the melody, and sometimes they have counterpoint with each other, sometimes they're in a duet. But their parts are supposed to sound much more improvised. You know, Amy and I kind of lay the rhythm down, and these guys get to do all the interesting stuff. And last but not least is Sherwood, who wrote his own part for this, and because it was originally just for woodwind quintet. And he's playing a really cool instrument called the cajon, and he's now going to demonstrate it for you.
Well, this cajon, C-A-J-O-N, is, as you can see, just a box. It's believed to have its origins in Peru, the coastal part of Peru, and originally was made of utilizing shipping crates that they used to ship fish in. And because did I move over this way? Is that my hint to use the microphone? Okay, I got the hint, all right. But it's the way this is constructed. It has a hole in the back, which is kind of a sound hole, and it's made so that the player will sit on top of it and play it. It gets different timbres, different sounds, depending on where you strike it. So all those different timbres will be utilized throughout this work. Hope you enjoy it. I don't want you to think we're just begging for applause here, but we were asked to stand for a photo at the end. And we're missing, are we still missing one? We gotta find Tim Easter. Is he there? Is he coming? I heard the door close. He did what? Great. Well, this will be 11 minus 1, I guess. I don't know. Tim Easter's who we're missing, but we'll pose one more time. Thank you all for coming. Good night.